welcome back to the On the Money YouTube channel powered by Allied Wealth. I'm Ryan Wheelis, and today we're going to spend some time talking about taxation in retirement. I believe taxes could potentially be your biggest expense during retirement. I actually think it could cost you more than healthcare, all right? So listen up, it's super important stuff here. So we're going to spend some time initially talking about retirement account money. All right, so retirement account money for the purposes of this video is going to be 401k and 403b money to start with, all right? So what happens is when we put money in our 401k and 403b, the money we put in is not taxed. We don't pay any tax on those dollars whatsoever. In fact, we get a tax deduction for putting money into our 401k or our 403b. Next thing is we get an employer match. That employer match goes into our 401k or 403b, also not taxed. Pretty cool. And lastly, any growth we get along the way is also not taxed, all right? So at some point in time in the future, we're likely going to want to use these dollars we've accumulated to finance the lifestyle we wish to live in our golden years. So what that means, though, is if we didn't pay tax on the way in, our employer match wasn't taxed, and our growth wasn't taxed, at some point in time, folks, we're going to have to pay taxes, right? So every dollar that we pull out of these 401ks and 403bs is 100% taxable. Now, there is a caveat to that, or an exception. And that exception is if you were to do what we call a 401k or 403b rollover, to where you take your 401k balance or 403b balance and move it over to an IRA. That's called a rollover, folks. And so many people out there don't know that that is a complete non-taxable event. When you roll your 401k or 403b over to an IRA, you pay zero tax, all right? So a lot of people don't do this because they're afraid they're going to pay taxes on it, and that's absolutely not the case. Now, there's a couple of things when a couple of points in life when a rollover can occur. One of them is what we call an in-service withdrawal. This happens sometimes at age 55, most times at age 59.5, and after age 59.5, you can actually do what's called an in-service withdrawal. An in-service withdrawal allows you to take your balance out of your 401k plan and roll it over to an IRA. If you do that, that's a non-taxable event. You do not pay taxes on that money whatsoever because you're moving it from one retirement account to another retirement account. You're not taking possession of the funds and spending those dollars and incurring a tax liability. Pretty cool stuff. Now, the next thing about that is some people say, well, Ryan, if I do that, does my 401k stay open? If I keep working and want to continue contributing to my 401k, can I still do that, and do I still get my employer match? The answer to that is absolutely yes, you do, all right? Now, a couple of instances where you may want to do an in-service withdrawal. Maybe you feel like the options in your 401k plan are not best for you, meaning the 25 funds and few target date funds you have in there, you're thinking to yourself, hey, maybe there's some choices I have outside of this 401k that could put me in a better situation. The other thing that can happen too is if you were to do an in-service withdrawal, we may be able to employ a Roth IRA conversion strategy depending on what your income levels are. Pretty cool stuff. Another rollover point in life is when you actually do retire. When you retire, you roll your 401k balance out of your 401k into an IRA in most cases. All right, well, when you do that, again, the same thing as the in-service withdrawal. Either way, a 401k rollover is a non-taxable event. And you roll those dollars into an IRA, and once you go into that IRA, any growth that you get on those dollars going forward is also not taxable. And the only time you will pay tax on the money coming out of an IRA is actually when you pull money out, all right? When you take a distribution for income purposes or whatever you may be doing, anytime you take money out of that IRA account, put it in your checking account and spend it, you're going to pay tax on that distribution. And those distributions are taxable, 100% taxable, at ordinary income tax rates, all right? So a couple other things about IRAs once you roll your 401k or 403 balance into those. IRAs are subject to RMDs, and RMDs are 100% taxable. That's based on your age. You take your IRA account balances as they were the year now, it's when you turn 73, by the way, and you divide by a certain amount, and that gives you the amount of money that must come out of your IRA by the end of that year. And that dollar amount is 100% taxable to you. Now, a couple other things. Upon death, a spouse, if one spouse dies and there's a surviving spouse, the surviving spouse simply inherits the IRA and it becomes their IRA. All right. No tax liability whatsoever there for that to happen. Now, if the second spouse dies, the children here must take delivery of the account. They don't pay tax right then and there, but there's a caveat. They must distribute all funds out of that account over a 10-year period. And each one of those distributions over a 10-year period is 100% taxable to them. That law came into place here recently, and it's one of these things that really could create a big tax liability for your heirs, especially if you've done well putting them through college and you've done well in life saving and leaving them a substantial IRA balance left over, and they're doing well in life because you put them through school and they're making good money, that sort of thing. You may put them in a situation where they're paying a large amount of income tax and a lot more of your IRA dollars are going to Uncle Sam than you wanted to in the first place, which is why some tax planning is so important. But for today's video, we're just trying to keep it super simple, all right? Now, next we're going to talk about brokerage account money, which is dollars we consider to be outside of retirement accounts. So when we're funding a brokerage account, we're going to use after-tax dollars to fund these. So again, the money we put in brokerage accounts is money that's been taxed. When we put the dollars in here, a couple of things happen. We can get growth in our dollars, we can earn dividends, and one thing up here is we can also earn interest. All of those can be taxed in different ways. So the first thing we'll talk about is any potential growth. Well, growth can be taxed as short-term gains, and short-term gains are any position bought and sold within 1 year or less. Any position like that will be taxed at ordinary income tax rates. The second way is can be a growth position can be taxed is capital gains taxes. Now, if you buy a position and hold it for 1 year and a day and then sell it, it now qualifies for long-term capital gains treatment. And long-term capital gains treatment can be taxed at 15% to as high as 20% depending on what your income is, or it can be as high as 20% plus 3.8% net investment income tax if your income is really high, all right? So that's gains as far as growth goes. Then you have dividends. Dividends are taxed at capital gains rates and are typically taxed around 15%, but if your income is high enough, they can be taxed as high as 20%, and if it's super high, you can also be hit with an additional 3.8% net investment income tax. Now, one thing I didn't put up here was interest, like bond interest or interest from a bond fund or interest from a bond as well. Those are all going to be taxed at short-term capital gains rates, which is really ordinary income rates. So any interest you earn will be taxed at ordinary income tax rates, all right? Now, as you go through here, a couple things to remember is in a brokerage account, if you buy a stock today and hold it, maybe you bought it for $1 and you hold it up until the day you die and it's worth $100, if you die and you leave that stock to your beneficiaries, well, that gain from $1 all the way up to $100 is not taxable to your beneficiaries because your beneficiaries receive what's called a stepped-up basis when you pass away. So if you want to leave some money behind in a very tax-efficient manner, you may consider buying some stocks and passing those on to the next generation and utilizing that stepped-up basis to get those gains to those heirs and not pay any tax whatsoever. Still a pretty cool thing in the tax code, by the way. We talked about dividends already, so let's move into the next phase here, which is Roth IRA money. Probably my favorite type of money because, hey, tax-free money is what Roth IRAs are all about. Now, there's a couple things, though, that we need to understand about Roth IRAs. When you put money into a Roth IRA, taxes have been paid on these dollars, okay? So again, we're using after-tax money to fund these, similar to the way we fund a brokerage account. Now, when the money goes into the Roth IRA, there's a couple of things you need to know about. There is a 5-year waiting rule, but the 5-year waiting rule does not apply to the money you put into the Roth IRA. That was your money. You already paid tax on those dollars, okay? So the 5-year waiting rule does not apply to your money that you put in, so the deposit is available. The reason why I say that is some people won't do a Roth IRA because they feel like they have to wait 5 years to get any money out. Well, if you did a Roth IRA, and God forbid you had an emergency of some kind to deal with, and you need to get to those dollars, you could actually get to those dollars and not subject yourself to any tax liability or penalties because you'd already paid taxes on those dollars. Now, the 5-year waiting rule is still applicable. But the 5-year waiting rule applies to any gains or growth that you've realized. Those gains and growth must be in the account for 5 years before you can start accessing them and taking money out. If you take it out early, you're going to pay a penalty, all right? The cool thing about a Roth IRA as well is that any growth you realize in the account is not taxable at all right? And the money is not taxable to your beneficiaries. So you pay no taxes whatsoever when your beneficiaries pay no taxes whatsoever when they inherit this money. So in a Roth IRA, you pay tax going in, you get tax-free growth while you're in the account, and you pay no tax on the dollars that come out of the account. And if you leave the money behind the beneficiaries, there's no tax due on that as well. So it's the best way to have tax-free money in a tax-free inheritance for your heirs is a Roth IRA. One other thing too is a Roth IRA is not subject to any required mandatory distribution amount and not taxable to beneficiaries upon your death. Pretty cool stuff there. Big fan of the Roth IRA as well, all right? Lastly, we're going to jump into pension money for a minute. Pension money can be taken a couple of ways, but pension money, if taken as payments, as you go for the monthly check you can't outlive kind of thing, well, if you do that, 100% of those payments are taxable. They're looked at just like a distribution from any IRA account, all right? They're 100% taxable. And sometimes people say, hey, I don't want to do that monthly payment thing. I want to take the lump sum. I take my pension in the form of a lump sum. Well, if you take that pension in the form of a lump sum, what you're going to do is roll that over to an IRA. And once you do, that pension lump sum is now subject to all the IRAs and taxation we discussed earlier about IRAs. Folks, I hope you found this video very informing about how different accounts and different types of money are taxed in retirement. And remember, taxes are super important to be mindful of in your golden years because I do believe they could be your biggest expense in retirement. Folks, if you like the content we're putting out, please give us a like down below, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to give us any comments about any type of video you'd like to see or any questions you have about anything we talked about in this video. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.